Okay, welcome back. Proceed na po tayo sa ating fourth topic, which is contingencies. So, what is a contingency? A contingency is a potential occurrence of a negative event in the future. So, pag sinabi natin contingency, ito yung posible na mangyari sa hinaharap, which is particularly yung negative effect. Mga halimbawa po nito ay economic recession. So, pag sinabing economic recession, it is unable to function properly or the discontinuance. So, hindi nag-continue yung economic growth wherein talagang walang pumapasok sa bansa na mga, mga especially yung mga iba't ibang factor, halimbawa sa tourism and the other sector, kasi nga yung economic will be threatened. Then, next, natural disaster. So, yung Philippines, which is really prone and devastated by natural disaster, specifically, example of that, the typhoons. Maraming mga malalakas na typhoon na sumasalanta at bumibisita sa Pilipinas, sa Philippine Area of Responsibility. Another of that, natural disaster, is the volcanic eruption activity. Halimbawa, yung pag-alboroto ng Bulkang Mayon and the Taal Volcano in Batangas. Tapos, fraudulent activity. When we say fraudulent activity, ito yung mga activities na hindi natin maiwasan pagkakaroon ng mga bankruptcy. Then, other on the line is the terrorist attack. Kapag kakaroon ng mga terorismo, halimbawa sa isang lugar, so, ito ay nagdudulot ng hindi magandang epekto, lalo na sa business venture. Next, or a pandemic. So, ito very freshly, itong pandemic, wherein I still remember the fast economy of the Philippines from year 2016 to 2019 na wala pang COVID-19 ay talagang naiiba. So, since 2020, nagkaroon ng economic recession because of coronavirus disease. In 2020, businesses were hit with the coronavirus pandemic, forcing many employees to have to work remotely. What do you mean by that? So they work at home, they will not allowed to go outside or work in the workplace. Rather, they work exclusively at home. So, bakit? So, to prohibit, to prevent contact with other people, with one another. Kasi nga, yung virus talagang nakakahawa. Hindi siya natin nakikita. Sabi nga, prevention is better than cure. As a result, companies needed to implement remote work strategy. So, yun nga, sinabi ko, they work at home. So, hindi sila pwedeng lumabas. And, limited lamang, one member per family ang pwedeng lumabas if they buy or, literally to buy any materials, their daily necessities, example foods, water, and other. However, For some businesses, working remotely was not an option, which led to the implementation of enhanced safety measures for employees and customers to prevent the spread of the virus. So, mayroon pa rin na mga natira, ibang mga workstation, wherein they need to be able to implement a limited face-to-face kung saan yung mga employees nila ay kailangan talaga pumunta doon sa kanilang mga workplace. But then, talagang limited lamang. At kung pumunta sila sa isang lugar na doon, ay hindi sila pwedeng makipagsalamuha, makipag-contact sa iba to avoid or prevent the spread of the coronavirus 2019. Understood? Okay, let's proceed. Although contingency can be prepared for, the nature and scope of such negative events are typically unknowable in advance. So, yun nga. Pag sinabi natin contingency, ito yung mga emergency na nangyayari. Hindi natin inaasahan, but then occurred along the way. But then, yung magagawa natin ay kailangan nating maging handa. The nature of the scope of such negative events are typically unknowable. Walang nakakaalam. Walang may gusto nito at walang sino man makakapigil nito. So, yun nga, sinabi ko, now we need to be prepared for us to be able to survive and adapt to the changes. Companies and investors plan for various contingencies through analysis and implementing protective measures. Yun, yung mga companies and investor, nag-implement sila ng iba't ibang mga bagay, pamamaraan, procedures, mga specific na rules na ini-implement nila to spread the novel coronavirus or the coronavirus disease 2019. So, magkagayon nga, so nagkaroon tayo ng mga protective measures like washing your hands properly, then maintain social distancing. Siyempre, yung wear mask kapag tayo ay pumupunta, especially sa matataong lugar. In finance, managers often attempt to identify and plan using predictive models for possible contingencies that they believe may occur. So, ito mga financiers, mga managers, so, talagang mga advanced sila. Gusto na talaga nilang ma-identify at magkapagplano ng mga predictive models na mga posibleng gawin nila kapag dumating na itong mga emergency, mga contingencies na mangyayari. Na kapag nangyari na, talagang ay agaran nila i-implement. Financial managers tend to err on conservative side to mitigate risk. Siyempre, ayaw nating malugi ng mga business managers and business financiers. So, naisip nila yung mga conservative side para ito ay mabawasan yung risk na pwede nilang ma-face kapag dumating itong mga contingencies. Then, sabi dito, assuming slightly worse than expected outcomes. Ito mga contingencies na ito ay mas greater effect sa inaasahan natin. Minsan, kung hindi natin inaasahan, yun pa yung nangyayari rather than the expected outcomes. Then, itong contingency plan might include arranging a company's affairs so that it can weather a negative outcomes with the least distress possible. Eto. Siyempre, kapag mayroon tayo mga contingency planning programs, especially when we implement it to our employees, so kung magandang magpatakbo yung isang business manager or financer, yung entrepreneur or business owner, so mababawasan, mamimitigate yung distress. Siyempre, magiging mababa yung casualty or epekto nito sa business na pinamamahalaan natin. Okay. Now, my question is, how a contingency works? Paano ba ito gumagana? To plan for contingencies, financial managers may often also recommend setting aside significant reserves of cash so that the companies rather strong liquidity even it meets with a period of poor sales or unexpected expenses. Even may mga unexpected expenses, mga other matters na nangyayari, ito mga contingencies na ito, mga emergency. So, the company itself will be able to stand again and lift up and have a strong and bold reputation para tumindig muli, makatayo. Sabi nga, tayong mga Pilipino, talagang resilient tayo. Marami man mga contingency na nararanasan natin, yung mga emergency, mga hindi natin inaasahan, specifically into the entrepreneurial world, sa business venture. So, naroon pa rin yung hope natin, yung pag-stand natin. Talagang resilient para makarecover tayo sa pagkalugmok. Managers may seek to proactively open credit lines, while companies is in a strong financial position to ensure access to borrowing in less favorable times. Halimbawa, pending litigation would be considered a contingent liability. Contingency plans typically include insurance policies that cover losses that may arise during and after a negative event. So, kailangan may mayroong mga insurance policies before and after we experience a contingency. So, maganda ito na mayroong contingency plan. So, it is how it works na kapag mayroong mga negative na nangyari, so, we will be able to lift up and stand again. To continue serving and continue yung product and service natin para sa ating mga customers. Understood? Okay, let's proceed. However, insurance policies may not cover all of the costs of every scenario. Kahit na hindi lahat ay cover ng insurance policies. Pero naroon pa rin yung magandang epekto ng contingency plan and it one of the reason of how it works. For example, business interruption, insurance does not usually cover pandemic. So, hindi nito, sa mga business interruption, hindi nito naging cover yung nangyari ngayong coronavirus 2019 globally, which many businesses suffered through as a result of coronavirus pandemic. Maraming mga affected na mga business establishment. So, continue pa rin yung business venture kahit na hindi lahat ay cover ng insurance policies. The federal government had to step in and pass the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security CARES, or the CARES Act, which provided financial relief to businesses, families, and local government to stem the economic hardship caused by the pandemic. So maganda itong mga federal government, gaya nito, na initiative to give or provide people a financial relief, especially sa mga business owners, families, and local government, wherein talagang majority are affected by the coronavirus disease 2019. In particular, the Paycheck Protection Program, or the PPP, offered $349 billion in aid to a small business to help them maintain their payroll and expenses. So like the Paycheck Protection Program or the PPP, kung saan nagbigay sila ng 349 billion pesos para mahilom yung mga pagkalugbok ng mga maliliit na may-ari na mga business para matulungan sila na ma-maintain more specifically yung kanilang mga expenses, makontinue nila yung bibigay ng quality product and good services para sa mga avid customers. Okay, next. Are you with me pa? Okay, let's continue. Insurance companies might also limit coverage or put exclusion in place for an act of God, which is an exogenous event, meaning outside of human control, such as flood or an earthquake. So, nasabi ko na yan kanina, na may mga insurance company na mayroong mga limit coverage sa mga affected nitong hindi maiwasang mga phenomena gaya ng flood, mga pagbaha at earthquake, pagputok ng bulkan. Also, insurance cannot replace the customers that were lost to competitor due to an event, particularly if it was an internal systems issue such as data breach. So, that is very true na kapag yung mga customer talaga, kahit mabigyan mo sila ng insurance, so, hindi na maibabalik. So, dati talagang sigla, lalo na pagkakaroon ng mga internal systems issue gaya nito, mga data breach na ito. As a result, business need to have contingency plan established to help minimize the lost revenue and increase costs that are involved when business operations have been disrupted. Typically, business consultants are hired to ensure contingency plans take large number of positive scenarios into consideration and provide advice on how to best execute the plan. Mayroon tayong mga business consultants na nagtatrabaho, nagbibigay ng services para ma-ensure yung mga contingency plan effectively kung saan masolusyonan yung mga contingency situation na kinakaharap natin. Nang sa gayon ay mabigyan ng best solution. Understand? Okay. Kung naintindihan, dito na tayo sa types of contingency plans. Pag sinabi natin contingency plans are utilized by corporations, governments, investors, and by central banks, such as Federation. Contingencies can involve real estate transactions, commodities, investments, currency, exchange rates, and geopolitical risks. So, maraming namamahala dito sa mga contingency plan na ito. So, yung mga nabanggit ko. So, let's take a look of that. Take note po. Then, protecting assets. Contingencies might also include contingent assets, which are benefits rather than losses. So, dito sa sinasabi kong protecting assets, contingencies might also include contingent assets which are benefits rather than losses. So, gano'n naman talaga na kapag, we protect assets, sinisecure natin na the business owners, the entrepreneur, the businessman will be benefited. Wala pong mga businessman or entrepreneur na pumapasok sa business venture na gusto lang magpalugi. Understood? That accrue to a company or individual given the resolution of some uncertain event in the future. A favorable ruling in a lawsuit or an inheritance would be an example of contingent assets. So, kailangan favorable yung law. Lalo na sa mga to those business owners, sa mga businessman, yung rule or law will be favorable to them. Contingency plans might involve purchasing insurance policies that pay cash or a benefit if a particular contingency occurs. Binabayaran itong mga apektado. Hindi sila hinihingan, kundi tinutulungan. For example, a particular contingency occurs. Halimbawa, property insurance might be purchased to protect against fire or wind damage. Then, investment positions. Sabi dito, investors protect themselves from contingencies that could lead to financial losses related to investing. Itong mga investors natin ay pinoprotektahan din ang kanilang mga sarili amidst the emergency or mga situation na hindi controlled na nangyayari pa rin. Investors might employ various hedging strategies such as stop loss orders, which exit position at a specific price level. Hedging can also involve using options strategies, which is akin to buying insurance, whereby the strategies earn money as an investment position loses money from a negative event. The money earned from the option strategy completely or partially offsets the losses from the investment. However, these strategies come to a cost, usually in the form of a premium, which is an upfront cost payment. Investors also employ asset diversification, which is process of investing in various different types of investment. As asset diversification helps to minimize risk if one asset class, such as stocks, declines in value. Kailangan mag-invest tayo in the different aspect. Kasi dapat maging prepared tayo during that mga contingency na yan. So, hindi tayo dapat magpadala na porket tayo ay napagdaanan. So, talagang hindi na tayo tatayo. So, kailangan nating umusad pa rin. Okay? Next. What is contingent immunization? So, ano itong contingent immunization? Contingent immunization is a type of contingency plan used in a fixed income investing. It involves the fund manager switching to defensive position if the portfolio drops below a predetermined value. So, kailangan maging immune. Itong from the word contingent immunization, kailangan manatiling growing, immunize, tapos makarecover agad itong specific business na mayroon tayo. Business continuity and recovery. Maganda to. As part of a contingency plan for disaster. Ito mga business continuity and recovery ay talagang bahaging-bahagi ng contingency plan, lalong-lalo na mga disasters. Such as itong pandemic. Companies need to plan ahead to ensure that the business can operate during and after an event. So, ganun. Nagkaroon ng mga paghahanda. Especially during the pandemic, kasi hindi natin alam itong pandemic na ito, kusa na lang dumating at affected na hit yung whole economy globally. This type of contingency plan is often called a business continuity plan. So, kailangan na magkaroon tayo ng business continuity plan or a business recovery plan to recover from a certain contingent happening. Nagkaroon na ng emergency, nagkaroon na ng negative effect sa economy, itong pandemic, coronavirus 2019. So, better to have a business recovery plan. Typically, a business continuity team is formed to plan for any possible contingencies and manage the continuity and recovery plan during a disruption. So, merong mga business continuity team na namamahala and doing the function to form plan for any possible contingencies na mga gaya nitong pandemic COVID-19. Businesses need to identify their critical business functions and perform an analysis of how an event might impact the company's operations and processes. So talagang very strong yung impact ng coronavirus 2019 sa economy. Walang mga pumapasok sa bansa, puro labas, puro gastos, puro utang. Yan ang reality. The contingency plan would include implementing the recovery of critical business functions such as systems, production, and employee access to technology such as computer. So, kanina nga, nabanggit na better to have plan. Bawal lumabas, pero yung mga ibang mga establishment, mayroong mga limited na nagtatrabaho sa mga workplace. Kasi, paano nga ba makakapag-serve? Specifically, yung mga nasa frontliners. So, dito naman, kailangan sa pag-implement ng mga contingency plan would include implementing the recovery of critical business functions such as systems, production, and employee access to technology such as computers. Mahalaga na mabigyan sila ng enough access to technology na makapagpapatuloy, makatutulong upang makapag-continue ng pagsiservisyo kahit nagtatrabaho sa bahay. For example, a contingency plan for a pandemic would include developing remote work. Sabi nga dito na halimbawa, a contingency plan for a pandemic would include developing a remote work. Sinabi ko na yan kanina to help prevent the spread of the disease and to provide employees with secure access to their work. Meron pa rin yung iba na trabaho, bagamat yung iba ay talagang natanggal, majority, pero others are able to secure their access to work. As a result, companies would need to invest in technology, which could include providing laptops and video conferencing access to employees, creating cloud-based data storage, and facilitating access to company-wide communication such as email and internal data. So, yun nga, kailangan talaga na itong mga companies ay mag-invest ng malaking halaga para ma-support specifically makabili ng mga laptops and join video conferencing. Special considerations. A contingency plan should also prepare for the loss of intellectual property through the theft or destruction. As a result, bankrupts of critical files and computer programs, as well as key company patents, should be maintained in a secure of the site location. Contingency plans need to prepare for the possibility of operational mishaps, theft, and fraud. So, kapag mayroong mga nangyayari, siyempre, under the social media account, mga the critical files and computer programs are nawawala na lang bigla. So, mayroong mga contingency plans na ginagawa dito. Contingency plans need to prepare for the possibility of operational mishaps, theft, and fraud. A company should have an emergency public relation response relating to the possible events that have ability to severely damage the company's reputation and its ability to conduct business. Makapagpapatuloy pa rin ng business operation sa kabila ng pagkalugmok. Naintindihan? Okay. Let's come now to the benefits of a contingency plan. Ano nga ba ang mahalaga? Importante na malaman natin sa mga benefits of a contingency plan. So, bakit pa nagkakaroon ito? A thorough contingency plan minimizes loss. Ayan. Importante na magkaroon ng contingency plan para minimize, ibig sabihin, hindi man totally na maiwasan or masolusyonan, pero meron tayong magagawa to mitigate, to lessen, to reduce loss and damage caused by an unforeseen negative event. Naintindihan? Halimbawa, a brokerage company may have a backup power generator to ensure that trades can be executed in the event of power failure. Sana all. Kasi baga dito, maganda itong may mga ganitong program guys, na mayroong mga power generator backup. Kung mawalan ng kuryente, magkaroon ng power loss, they will able to continue serving or generating kahit wala ng kuryente, pero may power generation. A contingency plan can also reduce the risk of public relation disaster. A company effectively communicates how negative events are to be navigated and responded to is less likely to suffer reputation damage. Then, a contingency plan often allows a company affected by a negative event to keep operating. Magandang dulot nito ay nakapag-continue pa rin ang mga company, business owners, entrepreneur na mag-operate ng kanilang mga business kahit mayroong mga contingencies situation na nangyayari. Halimbawa, a company may have a provision in place for possible industrial action such as strike. So, magkakaroon ng strike. So, obligation to customers are not compromised. Hindi matitigil yung pagbibigay ng good services to the people, especially to the avid customers. Companies that have a contingency plan in place may obtain better insurance rates and credit availability because they are seen to have a reduced business risk. Meron na silang mga action taken upon before they hit by a sudden contingency. Meron na mga contingency plan, kaya kung mangyari man ito ay talagang they automatically implement ng action na talagang applicable na pwedeng maiwasan, mabawasan, ma-reduce yung business risk. Halimbawa ng mga contingency plan, as a result of the financial crisis, year 2008 rather, and Great Recession, regulations were implemented requiring bank stress tests to be performed to test how a bank might handle various negative contingencies. The stress test project how much a bank would lose if a negative economic event occurred to determine if the bank has enough capital or funds set aside to survive the event. So, ito kasi mga bank, so hindi pwede dyan magkaroon ng Great Recession. Sinabi ko na baga po yan na nagkakaroon ng this can discontinuity, they will not able to function. So di lang yan mag-operate ng isang araw, so marami na po yan nalulos, nakikitain nila. Understood? Banks are required to have a specific percentage of capital reserves on hand. Oo, kailangan na mayroon yung mga bangko talagang pursue, required na magkaroon sila ng specific capital na mahawakan. Then, depending on the total of risk, weighted assets, or the RWAs, these assets, which are typically loans, have various risk weights applied to them. For example, a bank mortgage portfolio might receive a 50% weighting, meaning the bank, in a negative scenario, should have enough capital that's valued at 50% of the outstanding mortgage loans. The capital called Tier 1 capital can include equity shares or shareholders' equity and retained earnings, which is accumulated savings of prior years' profits. Although there are various components that go into Tier capital ratio requirement, the ratio has to be at least 6% of the total risk-weighted assets. Let's say, as an example, Bank XYZ has $3 million in retained earnings and $4 million in shareholders. Halimbawa, yung Bank XYZ ay may matitirang $3 million. Yun ay ang kanilang kita or kinita. Tapos, yung $4 million ay sa mga shareholders. Iba-iba yung mga may-ari noon. Meaning, the total Tier 1 capital is $7 million. Bank XYZ has his weighted assets of $70 million. As a result, the bank Tier 1 capital ratio is 10%. $7 million divided by $70 million. So, ilan na? Since the capital requirement is 6%, the bank is considered well capitalized when compared to the minimum requirement. Okay, naintindihan na ba yung contingency? If you have question, violent reaction, you may raise me. So, kapag nag-meet na tayo sa Google Meet, so doon na lang yung mga tanong. So, isulat na lang po. So, tapos na tayo sa financial forecast, expected returns, risk, and contingency. So, stay tuned and active for our last topic, environmental and regulatory compliance.